Hey everybody, how's it going? Josh Rayner here. Seems like I only managed to find time to record in the car, but that's what's happening, so we're going to roll with it. I did record a podcast a few weeks ago with Tim Burzins of Amplified Vitality, and unfortunately it did not record properly with the audio, and I'm working on hopefully I can salvage it, but still working on that. Maybe I'll have to get someone who's like an editor, because something with the audio track and the video, it started okay and then it got split up, and then I don't know. Anyways, hopefully I'll be able to get that out for you guys soon. We were talking sugar diet, repeat, and so it seems like there's been some shifts, some drama on the YouTubes. Cole Robinson has abandoned you. I don't really know what he's doing. I never really watched his videos that closely. And I don't think I'd ever watched any of his videos until the sugar diet stuff, because he came onto it, or at least I only saw his videos once I was already pretty deep in this stuff. And I've always tried to tell people, I'm really coming at this from the repeat perspective, and I don't either ascribe to or adhere to whatever it is that Cole or even Mark is talking about. Mark is a friend of mine. I went on his podcast. Hopefully you've seen that. But for me, it's all just about kind of exploring these different ideas and seeing what any individual person can use dietarily as a tool to get healthy and to feel really good. So what I feel like is happening with a lot of people, and I hope people aren't just following Cole blindly, and if he changes, you need to change. And I get nothing against him. I don't know him. But it seems like he's kind of been all over the place. And so what an individual does with their own interests and their own exploration of trying different things is very individual. And so what I always hope for, and this is what I've always told people, is I'm hoping that I can give you enough tools that eventually you can figure out what job you need to do, so you can figure out what tools to use for them. So one thing that I've seen from either talking to people or seeing various videos online and people reporting back what they've felt is that the people who have gone really hard into the sugar diet, and especially sugar fasting, they report, just like I myself always said, man, I really seem to be craving starch. And so I feel like where the wheels are coming off for people is they're trying to go too far into the sugar. I'm definitely not an anti-protein person. I would never be anti-protein. I think there can be metabolic benefits to restricting protein at times. Certainly if you were trying to gain muscle, I would not tell you to restrict protein. But it seems like a lot of people are really trying to lose weight more than anything. And what I'm hoping for is a lot of people are actually trying to save their metabolism and fix their metabolism so that they can have a really high metabolic rate. They can have lots of energy. They can feel really good. They can perform well. They can sleep well. And that's really the way that I approach it. And so one of the reasons why I like experimenting with especially this kind of stuff so much is that I noticed a very marked increase in my metabolic rate, in my daily basal body temperature, and my energy levels and my sleep. And so I'm still on what my thing is, which is a very high carb diet, which strategically times the protein, tends to be later in the day, and not eating as much as I used to. And with also recognizing that you don't have to eat, your body weight in protein, for myself and a lot of people, 200 grams of protein every single day. You just don't need to do that if your priority is not building as much muscle as possible, but instead generally feeling good, being healthy, and trying to lose weight. So I have been leaning more into the starch. When I first started doing this a year ago or so, and this would be what Anabology was calling his honey diet, and I wasn't necessarily following the way that he described it. that's kind of what not necessarily gave me the idea, because I had already played with this kind of stuff in the past, but kind of led to me making the decision, I'm gonna do this right now, which was just eating carbohydrates during the day, mostly sugars, and saving my protein for dinner. And what I keep finding is that if I restrict the starch above protein, then I do not feel good, and it does not feel sustainable. I do not have a lot of energy. Now, I can feel good with plenty of sugar, but I need the starch eventually. I can do 2-3 day sugar fasting, and I'm not saying that people shouldn't be doing that, but the starch seems to be really important in, I don't know if I would say breaking it up, because in many ways you're continuing what you're doing, but you are giving your body either a more stabilizing effect, or it is actually giving this almost, what do you call it? Like a countering stimulus to maintain the effects of the sugar fasting period itself. So what I mean by that is, one of the things that I keep talking about is the similarities of what we're doing here with what many people have called or done the cyclical ketogenic diet, where the fat loss benefits of the ketogenic diet cannot be maintained long term if you do not intermittently introduce some carbohydrates to keep the metabolism going, and in many ways boosting it back to where it was before, because those people already recognize rightfully that a low carb diet over time will slow the metabolism. When you do not have enough carbohydrates, your liver cannot convert the inactive thyroid hormone T4 into T3. And not only that, but your exercise performance substantially drops, especially in the gym, especially lifting weights, without carbohydrates, without your glycogen stores full in your muscles to give yourself the energy to put out that high output, which one is going to stimulate the muscles to either grow or maintain, and two, give yourself the overall metabolic fuel to go really hard in whatever your training modality is, or your preferred exercise, and that also burns fat as well too. So it seems to me that starch is really important, and different cultures will either prioritize starch or sugars, and for the most part it's what's available to them, right? If you had all the sugary foods you wanted available to you in honey and fruits, of course fruit doesn't necessarily grow year round, but if you live somewhere tropical it might, then why would you do the backbreaking labor of farming for grains and potatoes? It's just not necessary. But if you live somewhere where it's cold and that's not available to you, then obviously it becomes worth the work. So the question is starch or sugar better than one or the other? If you have everything available to you, which most of us do now, if you're watching this, you have the internet, you have a grocery store, you can buy sugar, you can buy fruit, you can buy rice, you can buy potatoes. It's pretty much up to you. So what I keep telling people is, you have to just eat. You have to just eat these different foods and see how you feel. And don't be scared of any one thing. Try it, because nothing else will give you the feedback necessary to actually get the results that you need. I know that no matter how much sugar I eat, even if I eat 700, 800, 900 grams of sugar in a day, 900 grams of carbohydrates in a day, which is very, very, the majority of that would be sugar itself. Pure sugar in the form of table sugar or fruit or juice or honey, that I don't have that same low gear. I don't have that same drive that I have when I eat starch. It seems like I have to eat so much more sugar to have that power and that energy. I don't say energy, but at least like performance in the gym. That a lot of this leads me to believe that there is a specific value to not just the glucose itself, which is present in the starch, because sugar itself is already 50% fructose, 50% glucose. but there may be something about the ratio of fructose to starch, fructose to glucose in the overall diet, which I need to do this. I've been meaning to do it. I need to buy Joe Binley's book, Joe English, on Instagram. It seems like he's talked about this extensively, and so I'm gonna throw that out there for you guys. If you wanted to buy his book, go for it. I can't personally recommend it yet because I haven't read it, but I'm going to buy it and I'm going to read it because I am noticing this specifically. And in talking to him online and in messages, he seems to really, really harp on the value of the fructose to glucose ratio. So it seems like if I'm getting, 300 to 400 grams of glucose in a day, but it comes from the form of sugar, I do not feel as powerful if I get 300 to 400 grams of carbohydrates from pure glucose foods already. So there seems to be something actually important to the starchy, glucose-dense foods. And I know if anyone has done a cyclical ketogenic diet, when you reintroduce the carbs, when you carb up, when you refeed, like you can go to the gym, and then they'll often tell you, especially in the ketogenic world, because there still is this kind of like inherent notion that carbs are bad to it all. And so what they tell you to do is they tell you to do a workout, what they will often call glycogen depletion, which is basically using your muscles to such an extent that you can almost guarantee that all the glycogen is out of the muscles, and only then is your body primed to take up the glucose and it's time to refeed. And if you've ever done anything like that, anyone can tell you that the pump, and now remember, people on ketogenic diets are famous for you not having good pumps while on the diet. After the gym, as you're sitting down having dinner and you're eating a giant bowl of rice, you're eating potatoes, you may even be eating, junk foods like pizza and ice cream, but, obviously this is really, really the most pronounced in pure starch meals, that you start to get a crazy pump while you're at the dinner table. You're sitting there, you're sitting down eating, you're not like using your body. And all of a sudden, your body is being flooded. Your muscles are being flooded with this glycogen, and your veins, you'll see your veins in your neck and your shoulders start popping out, and your muscles get really full. And of course, you can't be into this stuff if you aren't a little vain. Instead, you're in the gym and you look in the mirror and you do a little flex and you do a little pump check. I'll go to the bathroom while I'm eating dinner and take my shirt off and be like, holy shit, I look incredible right now. Just like the veins in your forearms, everything is popping. And it's this crazy sensation that if you haven't experienced this, there's no real way to explain it. I've never felt that from like a pure sugar meal. I've never felt that before. And so I really, really think that there's something inherent to the starchy foods that is so integral to just feeling really, really, not just even good, but strong. I have felt very high energy on sugar. And one of the things that I've described, and I think Durian Ryder speaks to this very, very well, that he says he likes to not eat starch during the day. Remember, the high carb vegans often do what they call raw till 4. So obviously you can't eat starches during the day because starches you have to cook. And Durian Ryder will say, I don't like to eat starches during the day because I like to feel manic during the day. He likes to have this like overabundance of energy. But I think depending on your own personality type or whatever biological component gives you your personality type, at least for myself, depending on the day or what I'm doing, I may have more or less energy. But if I go manic, I kind of lose control of myself. And so I don't really need mania. I just need lots of energy in general. And I find starch to be far more stabilizing. And so when I first started really leaning into what we're maybe now describing as the sugar diet, or at least what my version of it was probably in March, where I really flipped the switch to specifically cut out protein for multiple days at a time and to really drive my carbohydrate intake into levels that would otherwise seem to be a little ridiculous. And what I was doing during that time was I was eating cereal and bananas for breakfast. I was having sugar. I was adding sugar to my cereal. If I was drinking coffee, I was adding sugar to it. But I was eating starch. I was eating fruit. I was added sugars, and I was doing it straight from breakfast. And what I noticed during that time was that's when I felt the best. And, there were days when I would sugar fast during the day and then load up on starch at night. But I was eating starch every single day. And not only was that when I felt the best, but I was specifically sleeping the best. Now, of course, the sleep is very likely a part of why I was feeling so good. But it seems like, okay, car, thank you, technology. It really seems like even if I was getting exorbitant amounts of carbohydrates in the form of sugar during the day, it didn't feel like I could just get in enough food without the starch. Now, that may be that the sugary foods aren't very satiating. Not that they're not filling, but they're specifically not satiating to the body. That I just never felt like I could eat enough. And because of that, yeah, maybe there's that mania. There's almost like, there's this like baseline level of stress, which is the body kind of being signaled, I'm not getting enough food. I need more food. Which when I eat a ton of starch, I don't feel that problem. I can feel well satiated, but I can have lots of energy, lots of drive, lots of good hunger, not like I'm starving, but like a healthy level of hunger, which kind of keeps you moving through the day, that has your stomach not feeling full or bloated or distended. That, at least for myself, seems to be really integral. And so what I think for myself, and what maybe some of you would want to try, is you can definitely do your sugar fasting during the day. And I think that is probably likely to speed up or kind of maintain a faster rate of fat loss. But make sure that you're either going to eat starch at dinner, which again is a slower rate of fat loss in the moment, but over time is likely to lead you to more sustainable results, and perhaps is more likely to prevent you from binging on any other foods if you are extremely hungry. Because again, I'm going to reiterate, if I lean really hard into the sugar and I sugar fast for multiple days, my starch cravings become just enormous. And I think it's important to listen to that if you can be really honest with your cravings and what they actually are telling you. And of course, not use that as an excuse to just eat whatever garbage you can possibly get your hands on. And so I think either some mix of, for some of you who perhaps don't have as hard of a time losing weight, you can potentially eat starch in the earlier part of the day. That might help you feel more balanced if you feel a little bit too manic. On the other side, you might be someone who's just going to have starch with dinner all the time. Because again, it's not, I know like people got into this because of the name, the sugar diet. But what we are really trying to do here, what I at least am trying to do here, is from the repeat perspective, really try to increase my metabolism, increase my metabolic rate, increase my body temperature, and just have an abundance of energy to do all the things that I want to do every day. I want to perform at a high level in my life across the board. I want to feel good. I want to be very productive. I want to be in a good mood. I want to have the energy to do the things I want to do. I want to sleep well, all of that. And I really think that starch is just a really important part of that puzzle. And so you might be someone who sugar fasts for a whole day, for multiple days, and then you starch refeed. That's fine. You might be someone who eats starch every night for dinner. That's fine. All of these things are fine. You're allowed to do anything. These are just ideas for things to play with to see what actually does work for you. I think, the vegan realm of this, a lot of times they call it high carb, low fat. But specifically that term, of course, all it means is high carb and low fat, but what it implies, that connotation, is generally a vegan diet and generally a very low protein diet. Now, I don't think there's any reason to go extremely low protein for very long periods of time. I think it's totally safe to not eat any real protein heavy foods for a day or multiple days. I don't think you should do that for really long periods of time, but for one day it's fine. But if anything, I think this is just a great opportunity or a great lesson that, if you're someone like myself who weighs about 200 pounds, you don't have to eat 200 grams of protein a day. You could eat, or even average on a week, 100 grams of protein a day. And again, if you're not trying to build muscle specifically in the act, there's just really no reason to go exorbitantly high. And not only that, even if you were trying to build muscle, realize that the protein is going to inhibit your ability to eat more carbohydrate, and that carbohydrate is going to fuel you in your training sessions to go harder, which is going to then signal the body to build more muscle. Assuming that you aren't protein deficient, which is definitely not 1 gram per pound of body weight necessary to not be deficient, you can't just signal the body to build muscle with just eating protein. The body doesn't work like that. The body needs a hormonal response, which will be both localized to the muscle and systemic to the whole body, which is why you can take steroids and not work out and build muscle. You can be a child who's growing and hit puberty and not work out and build muscle. But of course, as an adult, if you're not on drugs, you have to stimulate the muscle to grow with your training sessions. And the best way to do that is if you're fully fueled so you can train hard, you can signal the body to build muscle. So play with higher starch, see if that's something that agrees with your body. Play with the different types. Some people do better with rice. Some people do better with potatoes. Some people it's white potatoes versus sweet potatoes. Some people actually just do really, really well with bread, with wheat, with pasta. There's probably a very big difference in the quality and the source of what you're getting. So if you can only get not great quality wheat and your body responds terribly to it, but if you had like 00 flour from Italy and your body responds perfectly to it, but you can't get that Italian flour, then try to not eat wheat, because then it's going to bother you. I find rice to be super, super agreeable. This brings me to my next point. It's kind of a footnote of this video, but because it's what I'm doing and I'm responding very well to it, I wanted to make a point to bring it up, is that I have been adding a lot of vinegar to my diet. Now, vinegar is very high in acetic acid, and that seems to have some studied benefits in weight loss. I have seen the study. I can't remember off the top of my head, but if I can find it, I'll post a link to it down below. What I can say is, if you want to find it right now, X Fat Loss on Twitter, his handle is I believe EXFAT 150, or maybe it's X Fat Loss all written out. You can look him up on Twitter. He has posted this within the last few days. Look through his tweets about vinegar. It seems like in a study they did, where they had 2 groups, where they did not tell people to change their diet in any way whatsoever. They added acetic acid, I believe, in the form of vinegar, and the vinegar group lost more weight, or lost weight, and the other group maintained their weight. Now, what's funny is I didn't read this. I didn't see that. I didn't know that vinegar had any benefits to weight loss. I had noticed that I was really craving vinegar, and I was craving lots of starch, and so I've started eating a lot more rice lately. And what's crazy is, I spent a lot of time tracking my macros, weighing and measuring my food, and I just did not find it worked. It absolutely worked, but that's not what I'm interested in doing, because weight loss is not complicated. If you eat less food, you'll lose weight. The problem is, do you feel good while you're doing it? Are you healthy? Are you not going to then rebound when you're done? What I'm finding is I can eat as much starch as I possibly want, And as long as I keep the fat low, I do not gain any weight. I don't gain any weight, which is incredible. And so what I am finding is that if I add vinegar to my starch, it digests even better than it otherwise already did. Like I said, white rice digests very, very well for me. But if I add rice vinegar, like when you go to a sushi restaurant, the sushi rice has had rice vinegar added to it, I've noticed that not only does it digest well, but it's almost like my digestion feels better than it did before I started eating. Like I almost have a flatter stomach. Of course, the meal has to digest, but it feels like I have a flatter stomach after my meal digests than I did before that meal, if that meal has vinegar added to it. So if you're making white rice, I buy sushi rice, and then I add vinegar to it. I find it very palatable. It's very enjoyable. I like the taste of it, and it digests really well. You can add hot sauce. If you get the vinegary hot sauces like Crystal or Tabasco, they're not like the thick sauces or the gummy or the oily sauces. They're that kind of that light, the kind of sharpness of vinegar. You can add vinegary hot sauces. You can add them to rice. You can add them to like a meat and rice bowl. You can add them to potatoes. Another thing which I've been doing, which this is crazy for me, and I'll explain why. I've been adding ketchup to a lot of my food. And I have never been a big ketchup person. I didn't like it. I mean, I didn't dislike it necessarily as a child, but I wasn't huge on it. And when I would go to any place to get burgers and fries, I would probably have a little bit of ketchup, but I didn't really care too much to eat a lot of it. And it's so funny because for me, the cravings are driving my experimentation. And it was only upon eating a lot of sushi rice with rice vinegar added, because I just felt like I wanted that. I was eating at a sushi restaurant, and then I figured, oh, well, when I make it at home, I should add rice vinegar. And then I was adding that, and all of a sudden at one point, I just had this weird, like, I don't know if I smelled it somewhere, but my body just went, I want ketchup. And it was so weird because my first thought was, but I don't even like ketchup, do I? But I went to the store and bought a quote unquote healthier ketchup that's not made with corn syrup and other artificial ingredients. Heinz makes an organic ketchup, which has cane sugar. The Whole Foods brand makes a ketchup. Annie's brand makes a ketchup. There's a lot of different quote unquote healthier versions of it. And I started just pouring ketchup all over my food, all over a meat and rice bowl, over rice, over potatoes. And I'm finding that the meal makes me feel really good, and it digests super well. And the other thing about this is that, of course, there is sugar in ketchup. And what I've noticed is if I eat sugar diet, sugar fasting, super, super duper high sugar intake, over time, I really start to crave starch. But if I eat pure starch, I still crave sugar, but I only need a little bit. Feel like I need a little bit, and that kind of comes in almost at the end. So anyone who's kind of like a big sugar fan, or like an ice cream fan, you might really notice how, after a dinner, you might then be craving, oh, I want something sweet. And what I've noticed is if I eat rice, if I eat sushi, I don't necessarily need, I love ice cream, but I just love a little sorbet afterwards, or I want to drink a sugary drink during my meal, whether it be a Coke or a lemonade or a ginger ale. And adding ketchup, which is inherently sugary, seems to really satisfy my craving for that, and it feels a lot more balanced for me. So I really think that there's something to this connection of foods, which is, combination of foods, which is this high starch, some sugar. And that's what seems to be what I need to feel really good, to feel my best. So really just kind of wanted to throw out there for you guys to try putting more starch in the diet. Experiment with vinegar in whatever way you want to try it, whatever might sound good to you. and just kind of see what happens. It seems like vinegar can be useful for weight loss. For myself, my desire to use it is predominantly for the effects on digestion itself and how that makes me feel. But yeah, want to throw that out there. And again, try these different starch implementations. Try a starch throughout the day. You know, whether you need to start your day with breakfast, maybe you want to start with it at lunch, maybe you want to wait all the way till dinner. Maybe try starch every day, like a durian rider and a raw till 4, and have a starch and protein meal for dinner at night. Maybe try multiple day sugar fasting and then starch. These are all different things to explore, to experiment with. And I think you might notice some benefits. You may have a slow rate of fat loss, but it may be more sustainable. And that's really what we're talking about. For some people, they might find that if they're eating a lot of their sugar fasting really hard, then when they go out, they're so hungry that they binge. So fat loss cannot really be discussed outside of the realm of what's sustainable. And again, fat loss isn't the end all be all. We definitely want to lose weight. We want to be beautiful. We want to be lean, but we want to feel good. We want to have energy. And I really think that, again, if you keep your fat low, if you keep your fat very low, you may find that you can actually eat as much carbohydrate as you like, whether that be in the form of sugar and or starch. So give that a try. I'm gonna really make an effort to try to get that podcast I did with Amplified Vitality up, if I can get it edited properly. And I'll try to get more videos out for you guys. Been a little busy lately and traveling. But I really think starch is going to be an integral part for this for most people long term. So, you know, leave any questions you have in the comments. I might do another starch focused video if it's maybe in the Q&A form. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.